there's also another critical factor that can cause a lot of havoc in the mind. And again, I want to draw this to your awareness. So when I say these things, the mind, see what I'm trying to steer away from is, I know that often in our conditioning, we're constantly looking for someone to tell us what's the way, what's the technique, what am I supposed to do? And I'm doing my best to resist that as I present this challenge. So that's why I'm being very careful of my language and weaving a lot of repetition here to reinforce the fact that I'm not here to impose a way on you, but more to invite you to draw your awareness to the things that are going on inside of you. So one of the major things that goes on inside of us is that we tend to have a version of right and wrong, good and bad. Okay, this comes from a whole bunch of conditioning from inception, depending on your belief system or experience system, even before birth. So all these layers of conditioning often have ideas again of right and wrong, good and bad, how you should be, how you should not be. So what that does when you start to watch this in the mind is that certain things may surface as you're sitting and observing, bearing witness. That's what this challenge is about. It's called bearing witness, to watch, to observe. As you may see certain things, certain ideas that you may have that this is wrong. I'll give you an example that came up just a couple weeks ago. I had someone tell me that he was brought up believing that anger was wrong, that being angry was not acceptable. And so what he told me was that when he had this little bit of anger come up, he suddenly would push it down because he just couldn't accept it. He couldn't believe that he couldn't allow himself to feel those things that were wrong. And this is what we do on so many different levels in our mind, is that we have this almost like divided kingdom, I've called it in the past. Divided kingdom, where we have versions, ideas, okay, this is acceptable and this is not acceptable. And so what we do is whenever something that's unacceptable comes up, we feel guilty, we may feel guilty, we may feel all the feelings that we have when we're doing something wrong from our own perception, and we'll try to get rid of it. Again, the getting rid of things. I wanted you to draw your awareness to that, because that may come up, as it often does for me and for many of the people I know in the mind, is this constant mechanism of trying to get rid of. And it's often to get, to avoid certain uncomfortable feelings, uncomfortable sensations, fears, all sorts of things. You'll have to evaluate them for yourself. Again, don't borrow my thoughts. Go in and really bear witness. And the slow thought movement is not about borrowed thinking. So as much as I'm trying to orient you into an exercise, I definitely want to draw your attention to this whole borrowed thinking that's going on in your mind as well. So this whole tendency of getting rid of things actually lends to a lot of suppression and denial. Whatever you try to get rid of, you begin to shut your awareness from. It's like covering a blanket over it. It's like closing your field of awareness to it. Your field of awareness starts to narrow every time you try to get rid of anything. So and that narrowing of awareness is really just a shutting down of your perception of what is. That's how I define awareness. It's to look at what is, not what you want it to be, not what you don't want it to be, just simply what is. So I've given you a few pitfalls to watch out for, and again, if you fall in them, fall in them. Don't worry, just keep watching. Resistance doesn't serve you. It's the act of witnessing. Now, before I close off or shut off for today, this seems too passive for the conditioned mindset of our times often. This idea of bearing witness. Well, what does watching do? I could watch all these things, but nothing happens. I'm gonna look at things that are obviously not serving me going on, that are not serving my best interest going on in my mind. So what does watching do? Well, when you stare, when you draw your awareness to something, it automatically heals. Watch that. Just test it out. Experiment with that. Trying to get rid of it, trying to work on it, as we often taught to do, actually does not allow for the healing of the mind. It's like a cut on a finger. If you have a slight paper cut, the finger automatically, our immune system, our wonderful body will automatically heal that cut on its own. You don't need to make any effort. It happens. Similarly, the field of awareness allows for that type of healing to take place in your mind and your being and your body, for that matter. So I don't want to, these arbitrary distinctions, they only exist in language, but they really aren't there. Draw your awareness to anything. Just hold the space. That's what we're talking about, holding the space for what is. And everything will take care of itself. I think that's a very reassuring thought. Don't you?